All right, Nick, let's talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide. We've talked about Alabama. They've had a great offseason. We've talked about things they've changed in the recruiting as far as where they recruited from and how they fixed a lot of problems. And there's one big glaring issue I think we've seen with the Crimson Tide as far as a deficiency that usually has not been a deficiency for them that I think is finally getting corrected. And I think it's going to have big implications for this team going forward. We're going to have to go through the bad before we get to the good, but Alabama fans, I think you're going to love this one. So stay tuned for that. But before we dive into that, I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, we're just going to rip the Band-Aid off. We have to go through the bad before we can get to the good and what they are doing now. But if everyone, thinks about the last few years for Alabama, it has been a team that in everyone's mind, as far as the Saban dynasty, everything that's been going on, they've underperformed as far as what our expectation for them is. And our expectation is to win a national championship, which unfortunately they have not done since, I guess technically it was 2021, but the 2020 season, they won that national championship. They went to the national championship for the 2021 season. They lose to Georgia. Then in that 2022 season, you beat Kansas State in the Sugar Bowl. I mean, doesn't feel great. And then back-to-back losses to Michigan the last 2 years. Not where we want to be as Alabama Crimson Tide fans. Nobody wants to be there. And I think the big issue here, the glaring issue for the Tide, has been the decline of the offensive line. And as I said, 2022 is kind of where everything started to fall apart, and then they lose back-to-back missions. There's been no college football playoff championships since then. So let's look at the offensive line and how it has produced the last couple of years. That brings me to this first chart showing Alabama Crimson Tide and what they've got going as far as where they have been overall grade-wise on the offensive line. It's a combination of their PFF pass blocking grade and run blocking grade. We see in 2022, it's okay, a 79.4 combined grade there. In 2023, takes a little bit of a step down, goes to a 74.55 overall grade there. Then we see in 2024, another really, really big step down, a 65.9 overall grade there. I think this has been one of the issues for the Crimson Tide the last couple of years. Very down offensive line play. They really haven't been able to be at that championship level. But there is good news for the Tide. I think we can see that over the last couple of years, and this brings me to my next chart, the Tide have started to focus on it. We see at the end of Nick Saban's tenure here in 2023 in this graph showing they are up. They got brought in 5 guys across the offensive line in that year. Then we can see in 2024, Kalen DeBoer, it did take a little bit of a dip. They brought in 3 guys there. Then again, 2025 with DeBoer, we're back on track. 5 more offensive linemen back into the fold. And as we can see, as the number of offensive linemen have been creeping up, so has the average quality of these offensive linemen as well, which I think is a really big indicator here. We saw in 2023, they brought in 5 guys with an average quality indicator of a 93. That's around a high 4-star, almost 5-star type of guy. We see in 2024, it dropped down to an 89 grade there, which isn't too great. That's like a mid-tier 4-star kind of guy. Then jumps back up in 2025 to that 93.3 overall quality indicator for the offensive line recruits. I think this is a good direction for the Crimson Tide to go. This is where they need to be, and this is getting them back on track to get back to the expectation of winning college football national championships, because that's where you want to be. And just to kind of take everything home for where it is and how other teams have stacked up, let's look at one more chart here, and this is for the 2024 season showing Alabama, and then I have Alabama highlighted. You can see Georgia, Ohio State, and Oregon all at the top there as well, along with Notre Dame. And you can see the x-axis at the bottom is their pass blocking rating per PFF. The y-axis is their win percentage. Teams that generally have been better at pass blocking which is just an indicator of offensive line play in the college football world in general. Teams that were better had more wins. Alabama, they're kind of in the middle as far as their pass blocking rating, and they're a little bit above average as far as their wins. We see other teams go further to the left. Notre Dame, above average as far as their pass blocking rating. Ohio State, again, even more above average. Georgia, much above average. And Oregon, probably about almost as high as you get there as far as their offensive line play. And we can see that correlates to wins on the field as well. These programs did really great. Obviously, all of those teams were in the college football playoff, and two of those teams were in the national championship as well. So I think Alabama, they're trending in the right direction. Do I think next year they're going to make the college football playoff? Yes, I do think they're going to make the college football playoff next year. Do I think they'll win it all? I think they have a pretty good shot because they have a good team. I think there's a lot of good things going, but I think overall this team is trending in the right direction, and we're going to see a return to form across the offensive line for the Alabama Crimson Tide. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But before we get to you, Alabama fans, in the comment section below, we're talking offensive linemen, which Alabama has had in spades as far as sending guys to the NFL. Offensive linemen from Alabama is something that has been synonymous over the last couple of years. So let us know in the comment section below, who is your favorite Alabama offensive lineman to make it to the NFL? Possibly do good, doesn't necessarily have to, but let us know who was your favorite Alabama offensive line to make it in the NFL in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on this data for the Tide?
So I think it's critically important because it pairs with what they've done or are seemed or what they seem to be doing at the quarterback position, right? There's all kind of reports, and it seems like Ty Simpson will be the starting quarterback. And while he is a physically gifted guy, we're talking this year, of course, and has his own attributes. He is a highly touted recruit. He's not nearly the level of athlete that, say, a Milrow was or like a Russell potentially could be. But they went with Simpson. Why? Because he's more of a, and I don't mean this in a negative connotation, I mean this positively. He's more of a game manager. He's more of a game controller, third down guy. He's more Tom Brady necessarily than he is Josh Allen. If you're going for an NFL example, and if you're looking for titles, Josh Allen for the Bills has 0, Brady retired with 7. Nothing against Josh Allen, but the reality is, historical precedence is, if you want to win titles, having a guy that can manage the situation, manage those third downs, critically important. Get those key late game drives. That's kind of what you need. If you look at prior championship Alabama teams, we kind of have a little recency bias because you brought up the most recent example in the 2020 after that season. That team was so stacked with wide receivers. Mac Jones had a great year, but my God, it almost didn't matter, right? If you go back to the Jalen Hurts title where Tua won it at the end, there was a lot of great defense. That was a team that still ran the football a lot. In fact, if you go back at a lot of Alabama's national titles under Saban, their quarterback play was much more game manage, take care of the football, make the right decision, run the ball, play defense, hit the wide open receivers when they're there. If not, get to your playmakers and they can make special things happen. That's how teams actually win national championships. That's how Michigan won it 2 years ago. That's really how Ohio State won it last year, is having a smart, effective, accurate quarterback who can read the defense, make the right decision, get the ball on time and accurately to a star player, and let the star player go to work. Now, the one thing that could hurt that is having a porous offensive line. If you remember the Brady example, and you pick any other great NFL quarterback that falls under that mold, a Drew Brees, a Peyton Manning, something to that effect, the way you beat those guys always and forever was pressure right in their face. You had to get pressure on them. It wasn't about blitzing them. You had to be able to rush 4 or 5 guys, maybe blitz one guy, and get pressure right in their face to throw off the timing, throw off the rhythm, throw off their ability to read the defense and make those kind of decisions. But guess what? When you're focusing on upgrading the offensive line, when you're focusing on recruiting the offensive line, you can solve that problem. And that's why this big change, this big fix for Alabama is absolutely critical. Kalen DeBoer, I think this is the most important strategic shift he's changing with this Alabama program. We talked about improvements he made in terms of understanding recruiting, learning the region, some hires he's made, some organizational decisions across the board, very smartly leveraging Nick Saban. All of those things are critical, but I think the most important thing he's doing is changing the strategy in terms of what they want in a quarterback and what they need for that quarterback. What they want is Ty Simpson, a guy like that who has great physical tools in his own right, but is much more an accurate passer, game manager, third downs, clutch kind of player than the freak athlete than like a Jalen Milroe was. And if you're going to have that style of quarterback, you need to re-emphasize in heavy fashion the offensive line, which they've done in spades. So give Kalen DeBoer a lot of credit. This is a two-part strategy here, right? One of the things that can happen with losing coaches and losing programs is you have two different strategies that don't work together, right? You get the pocket quarterback and then you don't emphasize the offensive line, and then disaster strikes. It happens all the time. It's not uncommon to see it. You can see programs. A&M under Jimbo Fisher is a great example of a program just like that, but there's a lot of other ones as well. USC, for example, out west with Lincoln Riley when they had Caleb Williams, very similar issues there in terms of having strategic misalignment, not getting that with Kalen DeBoer, not getting that with Alabama. And I think that's a great sign, not just for this year. I think this year it's a good sign, obviously, but I think for the future as well. I think time will tell that Kalen DeBoer is doing a lot of really smart moves and putting this program in a great position to contend, just like you said, per their standard, to win and compete for national titles.
Yeah, Nick, I think you bring up a really good point about the quarterback position because I think it almost goes hand in hand of what we're talking about with the offensive line in the sense that if you have the style of quarterback that Ty Simpson is, he is not like a guy like Jalen Miller. Jalen Miller can mask a bad offensive line. If there's a bad offensive line play, Jalen Miller is athletic enough to get out there, scramble, make huge plays with his legs, and he can really cover up a lot of the deficiencies there. When you have a guy like Ty Simpson, you have to have the offensive line to complement him to be successful. So I think it's going hand in hand, exactly like you're saying. Rise of the offensive line play shows the rise of the decision they've made at the quarterback position. We all know, this is what Kalen DeBoer was great at. Michael Penix, a guy that style of quarterback. He is very athletic, but he's a great pocket passer as well. He can absolutely dice people up. So this is the trend. This is what is going on with Alabama. So I'm glad DeBoer is both making a decision at the quarterback position, but not making that decision without saying, hey, we know that if this is a decision we make, we need to make the changes at the offensive line. We've seen that they have done that. It is going that direction going forward. They've also gotten some great guys in the 2026 class already as well. And I think that's correlating to going down the road. They're going to continue to stick with this style of quarterback, this style of offense. It's what suits them. It's what DeBoer is good at. It's what this team is being good at. And it's what this team has won with in the past. So I think we're seeing a new leaf turn over for Alabama, talking about outside of the last couple of years. I think we're getting back to that championship mentality. I'm really excited to see how things fold out this year.